In this video, we're going to start working with some of the more sophisticated visualization techniques using Google Platform, Google Cloud, and specifically we're going to work with Data Studio. Previously, we started to find out a little bit about how visualization works through Explorer, but now we're going to, again, try to come up with something that looks more like a dashboard. I mean, these are examples of some of the things you can do in Google BigQuery. So more dynamic representation of the data. Okay, so we start by going to Data Studio. We can just simply search for it. Go to your account. I'm going to log into the correct account. I have already created a project, so it will show here. For this example, we're gonna again work with City Bike that we have worked numerous times in this course. So again, this is a data set of the trips and bikes and their start location and the end location and the user type, birth year, and gender. So we have this data. What we do is that we are interested in, let's say we want to create a dashboard that relatively looks like this. Might be not 100%, but very similar to some of the indicators that we see here. So in order to do that, we need to calculate three things. First, we need to do a little bit of ETL. We want to get the number of bikes based on date and destination. We want to get the number of bikes based on date, gender, and user type. And also we want to calculate the number of bike IDs, distinct bike IDs. So for this, again, we use the dataset City Bike Trips. Feel free to pause the video if you want to write the code yourself. But what we do is that first we need to run queries in Google BigQuery on the dataset. We need to make sure that we have the right query. I have already developed the code. So let's say for the first one, we have City Bike by date, by start station. We don't really need order by, so I'm just going to copy this part, paste it here. Let's run it. It looks like it works, and I should be able to get the results that I'm looking for. So I have dates, I have start station, I summed up, I counted the number of trips that were done based on that station, and also count distinct the bike ID. So 116 trips from 112 distinct bikes. And also that's the total number of trip duration. So we just basically sum it up. I rounded it and turned it into hours. Now what we need to do here is this is good. So once you know that your code is running, you copy paste it. Again, I have done it here. The second one was a query based on gender. So again, you don't even need order by. Okay, so it's all the same, but now we're calling the user type and also gender. We're interested to really sum up the data based on these two elements, user type and gender. So we run this query. I also took out any gender that was unknown. I noticed there are a few of those. Again, that's part of like your data cleaning. I could have just kept it there too and presented, but just for the sake of simplicity, I'll just remove that data. Okay, so let's run this code again. Results look good. Again, aggregated based on these two. And the third one was calculating the city bike by bike ID. So again, very similar code. Instead of using gender and user type, I'm using bike ID, again, group by date. In each of those, I'm grouping by date because when we are visualizing this data. Date's something we always want to use in our aggregation. And the second is the element that's related to that query. Okay, so let's run the third one, make sure it works. It looks like it's going to be good. Okay, so that's aggregating pretty good too. All right, so now let's go back to Data Studio. Once you're here, you have three things to work with. You have Explorer, which is what we were doing previously, those quick metrics we could do by running any query. I could have done that when I was running these codes too, simply by exploring data. If you save it, you can see all of those here. These are some examples we ran before. Report is where you can create a dashboard, and data sources is where you want to add these queries. So basically, you are going to create new data sets, turning each of these queries into new data source for your report that you're generating. I have already created these, but let's just do them for the sake of showing you here. So we go to create. We created new data source. Again, if you have to accept anything for the first time, agree to terms, feel free to do that. We go to BigQuery. You can find one of the projects that you have been running. I created a project for dashboard, so I can click on it. But what you want to do is you actually want to run custom query data source. So I do custom query first, and then I will select my data set. Now that I know that my queries are good, what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy and paste each of those into custom query. We don't want to use legacy SQL, which was something that was more for BigQuery, for the first generation of BigQuery. If we don't click that, this is more in line with the standard SQL language. Don't click any of those. So if the code is here and it's good, you click connect. So once it goes through and it processes your data, it will automatically understand the dimensions of your data. So the first one, in the first one, we were interested to look at the bike stats by date and by start station, or basically the station that has released the bike. So we have all the values, data, number of bikes, start station. If you like to change any of these, you can do it from here. Metrics is where the record count, and record count is always 1. So I usually hide this. Now what you want to do is that for the sake of our visualization, we're interested to calculate the average number of daily minutes for the bikes that were used. So in order to calculate any custom formula, and again, this is, we can think of this as another step of transforming our data in ETL. I want to, let's say, calculate the average number of bike rides per minute. I can just copy this name, so I will have it because I want to be consistent. What you do is you add a field. I want to call this average number of bike rides per minute. And in order to calculate that, it's equal to sum of total trip durations by minute that's divided by number of trips. But now if we just keep it as number of trips, the issue is that that's going to be an aggregate. So we need to also aggregate the number of trips. I think if I do use sum for this should give me what I'm looking for. Okay, that looks good. So you click save, and you see that now you have a new field that's calculated, and it will show if you go back to the fields now, and it says FX. So that's a formula we have calculated. Again, we had an example of similar things we could do in our ETL software using a calculate or formula method. So we kind of do the same by custom coding here. Now, anything you do here, these calculated feeds are going to be treated like the dimensions. They're going to be calculated on the fly based on what we're interested for. Okay, so that's one data set. We can call this data set, again, I have the names to be consistent. I'm just going to copy paste the name. So city bike, by date, by station. I'm just going to add one because I've created something like that before. We can go back and now we can see our data set. Okay, so what you do is that you can go through your data, and I've uploaded this code for you. What you do is that you go and now do exact same thing for the second data set, that's gender, and then the third data set as which is called city bike by date underscore bike ID. So I have done this already, so we can see the example of these in mine. Again, you have all the dimensions and you have a new dimension that's calculated based on the same formula. I'm just running the same formula because I'm going to use it. And same thing for bike ID. Again, the fields that we are interested, now they're all loaded into our data studio.